Being organized with my work and personal life is very important to me. Truly, because unfortunately, I'm someone who can't seem to get anything done without some sort of visual or plan in place. I've made videos on how I organize my digital life with files and photos and things like that, but I've always wanted to make a video explaining how I use Apple Notes and how it's made many aspects of my day-to-day much easier. And this video isn't sponsored by Apple. Obviously, not everyone has or uses Apple Notes, but I definitely think some of the core ideas I'm going to talk about today can apply to any method of organization. And this is by no means a tutorial of any sort. I'm just sharing what I do in hopes of some people finding it useful and maybe wanting to try it out for themselves. I still am physically journaling, and I plan on making a video about that in the future. Here's how I stay organized using notes. But first, if new to my channel, thank you for stopping by. Here we talk about minimalism, frugal living, tech, and things of that nature. So if that sounds good to you and you end up liking the video, be sure to like, and please use the ghost dance from Ghost of Tsushima on the subscribe button. Let's get started. Bullet point to-do list. I'm going to start with this one because it is so easily my most used feature. If I have some things I want to get done or need to get done on specific days of the week, this is legitimately how it looks if you opened up notes on my phone. I don't overwhelm myself with tasks throughout the day, and I don't even use time blocks if it's not something that's time sensitive. Somewhere between 3 and 5 tasks a day seems to work for me. And if it's a day I have to go to work, well, I know that by now, so there's no reason for me to write it down and clutter up this list. Usually at the beginning of the week, if I know I have different things to do on different days, I'll just create a header with the specific day of the week and tasks in a list format right underneath it. As I go throughout my day, completing the tasks on my to-do list, I'll go into the Notes app and check the bubble off. And just to streamline it a little bit more, if I want to be able to access a specific note from my to-do list, if I type in this bracket, I create a link that brings me to that specific note. And as cheesy as it might sound, I really do get this small sense of satisfaction checking off each one of these bubbles throughout the day. If I'm out and about doing these things that need to be done, checking off a bubble in my phone will sync with my iPad at my desk. So once I am home and at my desk, I won't have to update anything in there and make adjustments manually. And finally, I'll keep this note pinned at the top of my notes for quick access. I definitely recommend simplifying your to-do list this way, but if there's just one main takeaway from this entire point, just give yourself shorter to-do lists. And it doesn't necessarily mean do less that day, it's just write down the most important things for that day. Because I know for me, if I see a long list of things I have to do, even if many of them are very simple, it's still just a little overwhelming. Use simplified folder categories. And this is probably the most sophisticated thing I'll talk about in the entire video, and it's hardly even that. Regardless if I'm talking about money, to-do lists, or just notes for work, if I want to keep it as simple as possible, this is like the baseline bare minimum I would do. And that's having folders for each category of my notes. They currently keep everything I need access to in specific, but at the same time, very broad folder categories. And those categories are grocery list, which is a shared note that my better half can adjust from her notes app and her phone if she needs to. Video ideas, where I have a list of ideas and scripts. The to-do list for the week that I mentioned earlier, and passwords, where I have a locked note with just a few passwords I don't have memorized yet. Just like I recommended with simplifying budgeting categories a couple of weeks ago, I think the same thing can apply here. A few broad categories or folders that cover everything I need. I usually have a dozen or so total notes, and while I can sort them by date created and things like that, I find that having them in these folders just keeps it the cleanest. And the fact that accessing these folders is just one swipe away is really convenient. And it's a nice way to have a visual of all my notes on one single page. And I'm dead serious when I say the only reason I use emojis for the names of the folders is just as a reminder to not take anything too serious. There are several more complex features regarding folders and organizing them, but for someone like me who doesn't have a ton of notes at a time, I'd rather not complicate it more than I have to. Going paperless. There are a few specific things I've been doing in notes that have helped me go nearly, if not completely paperless regarding documents and things like that. Something I found to be incredibly useful is the ability to scan documents, the ones that need a signature, directly into Notes and signing it and sending it right back from there. The app has gotten really good at recognizing the boxes that have to be signed, and combined with a pencil, it's become a really easy way to go paperless in some areas. Besides scanning and editing documents, inserting text directly to a note with the camera has proved to be very useful for me at work several times. And you can argue that just taking a picture of text is the same thing, but not if you need to make some edits. I read somewhere online of someone keeping a specific folder for instruction manuals of things they had around the house, which I suppose if you use the scan text feature could replace having all those instruction manuals clutter up wherever you keep them. I realize this is a very specific niche use case for notes, but I am not a fan of paper documents. I don't know why some things just aren't fully electronic yet. Shared notes. Throughout all my years of utilizing Apple Notes, I've only recently started using this feature frequently. Essentially, a shared note is a note multiple people can have access to in their Notes app. And specifically, just like my to-do list, one example, like I mentioned earlier, is a grocery list my partner and I both have in our Notes apps. And specifically, just like my to-do list, I'll make a check-off list with the things we need and simply check things off while I or we are at the store. And it updates in both of our phones. It's really the same thing as one of us leaving a list of groceries on the fridge, but a little bit more convenient because it's always right in our pockets if I decide to make a quick stop at the store. Aside from grocery lists, as our trip approaches, I plan on making a shared checklist on things we plan on bringing with us. Using this feature is more of a convenience rather than a tool for organization, but organization sort of comes as a result of the convenience, if that makes sense. Random thoughts. Lastly, I'll talk about something that has hardly any productive value at all, but is still important to me. And that's just an area to dump all my random thoughts, or things I hear throughout the day. I need to preface this that this is something I would 100% prefer to write down in my journal, but isn't always practical as it's not always available to me. I quote a lot in my videos, and I often hear things that I want to remember for later or reference in the future. And having one dedicated note to be unorganized with my thoughts, to just come back later to and rearrange is perfect. The point of this is to actually be unorganized. Meaning I'll typically just pull out a quick note from my phone, talk to text whatever it is, probably while looking like a total jackass, and come back to it later. Especially if it's something I want to elaborate on in the future. I don't think it's practical to try and be perfectly organized in every part of my life, and having a small space of somewhere that is perfect be imperfect, well, that just makes sense for me. There is a plethora of apps like this out there, and Notes is far from perfect, but if you just want the simplest, no-nonsense way of digitally organizing your life, for me, I can say this has most of everything I need. Anyways, these are just a few ways I organize different parts of my life using Notes. I hope a few of the things I talked about today piqued your interest and maybe you'll try them out for yourself. As always, I appreciate the time you spent here and I appreciate you watching. If you did like this video and you like this type of content, be sure to like and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you next time.